look at the bio and you look at the highlights of this woman's career and how she is still going strong. You talk about a baby boomer who has game. If there's anyone that we're going to talk to on this podcast over the years who has game, it's Julie Budd. Julie, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you so much. You're so nice to have me on your show.
I had an opportunity through our producer and my partner, Frank Fiore, to learn about you and to understand a career that you continue to thrive with. It's a remarkable career that started at a young age. I mean, it started. We're talking to you. You live in Manhattan. You were 12 years old, and we're going to be talking about things that you've done, from opening up for people like Sinatra, Liberace, Danny Thomas, Bob Hope, Joan Rivers, on and on and on, to still performing for symphonies and Las Vegas and various specials on TV. It's a remarkable career. Do you ever just take a step back and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm actually still doing this?
Well, what I do sometimes is I step back and I say to myself, I was here to witness so many incarnations of show business over the years. Like, the industry has changed so much in so many ways, and yet in some ways it stayed the same, you know. But to see all the different elements of this industry and to have been part of all those different facets over the years, sometimes I step back and I say, you know, I was really lucky, because I don't know if those opportunities are there for a lot of the young people that come along today. Not in the same way.
Exactly.
Anyway.
But with those opportunities, I think what we're trying to get across here by doing this podcast, the Baby Boomer Report, is that instead of you wanting to stay still, you continue to stay current, and you were able to fit your style into all of these different incarnations of the music industry.
Yes. And believe me, it didn't come at an easy price. You know, there were a lot of rejections. There were people that said, you know, this cannot happen at this time anymore, or there's not an audience for this, or there's not an audience for that. And I went out on the road, and people like myself, or Michael Bublé, or Michael Feinstein, and, you know, we sort of proved them wrong, because there is a huge audience for the American Songbook, and the audiences that come to the symphonies and the performing arts centers worldwide are proof of that. But, you know, it's funny. Sometimes you just have to carve out your own path, and you have to sort of have to have deaf ears on what others say, and you just have to, I think, believe that you still have something to offer. I think that's the biggest thing as you get older. You have to believe that you are still a viable person out there that still has just as much to offer at, say, 50 or 60 as you did at 20 and 30.
But you started at 12.
Yes.
Which is remarkable.
I did.
Here you are.
I did.
You're growing up in Brooklyn, and you're 12 years old. You found out serendipitously, I suppose, maybe you can tell us, that this little girl had this powerful voice, and not only a powerful voice that people would listen to in terms of your talk, but a powerful voice in terms of being able to be such an amazing singer at such a young age. Tell us a little bit about that, and then your graduation into getting, you know, opportunities at 12.
Well, you know, my parents knew that I was musical, but like most parents, you know, they weren't, well, not like most. I shouldn't say that, because there are a lot of people that do push their kids into the business. But my parents weren't like that. They really wanted me to go to college and to get a full education and a sort of a normal life at home with my sisters and my friends. They didn't want me to get all hung up to be a showbiz kid. But, you know, I begged them, and many, many times they said no. And we went away to the Catskill Mountains one summer, and they put me in camp, you know, summer camp. And I heard that there was this talent show. and I escaped from camp that day. I cut camp, and I ran down to the showroom at 12 years old in my shorts and my T-shirt, and I told them that I was there to win the contest. I didn't say I was going to audition. Isn't that funny? I said I'm here to win the contest, and I think that that's very, very, very significant. And
Not to mention very bold.
well, but I didn't know it at the time, Tony. It was just the way I saw things.
Yeah.
I'm here to win the contest. I'm not here just to be in it and just to have. I'm here to take home the trophy. It's like
I love the
just
confidence.
Well, but that's what I mean, when I said you have to believe that, you have this thing that's important and that, you've got to be your own cheerleader. And I remember the conductor's name. His name was Milton Lear, and he was a very, very, very well-known orchestra leader. I know that your producer, Frank Fiore, knew him well. Everybody did. And he said to me, little girl, what key do you sing in? And I had no idea what a key was. I had just come from camp, and don't confuse me. And so I just turned to him, and I said, just follow me.
Wow.
And I sang Moon River and Who Can I Turn To? And the MC was an ex-prize fighter. His name was Vic Minnow. And I actually owe Vic Minnow my career because he told me, he says, kid, you're going to close the show. And I went, okay, what did I know? Open, close. I'm in the show and I'm thrilled. And he took me aside. Now, here's where my life changed. He took me aside and he told me that there was a gentleman staying in the hotel, and his name was Herb Bernstein.
Oh, my
Now,
goodness.
unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that Herb Bernstein had sold 40 million records and that he had produced Laura Nyro and John Denver and Tina Turner and the Four Seasons and the Happenings and Leslie Gore
just a
and
few minor
Springfield.
groups, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, you get him to this show. He said, I bet you that he will produce you. Well, hello, that's better than camp. So I remember going down to the front desk and saying, what cabin is Herb Bernstein in? And they told me. And I walked all the way to his cabin by myself on a dirt road. I knocked on his door, and I told him he had to come to my show. And he did. That night,
Wow.
I got a standing ovation. I was so scared, I thought they were getting up and leaving. I didn't even know what a standing ovation was. I swear. I didn't know anything. I had very little rehearsal. The man was just following me. What could I say? And brilliantly so, Milty Lear was wonderful. And Herb Bernstein was in the audience. And I remember when I walked off stage, I saw him in the wings. And he grabbed me and he said, I need to speak to your parents.
Wow.
And that's how I got into show business.
Well, I guess the critical question is, did you win?
Of course I won.
Okay, I just wanted to.
I was going there
just
to
wanted
win it.
to
I was
validate.
in it to win it. I closed the show and I won.
I find it very interesting. I'm a big fan of the Amazon show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And
I love it. It's like my life. Hello.
Yeah, and the second season, focuses on the Catskills. And I remember growing up growing up in an Italian neighborhood in New Jersey, and then, the neighboring neighborhood was the neighborhood where, it was mostly all of Jewish descent. And
right.
in the summertime, that neighborhood would be literally vacant because they all went to the Catskills. And, and I found that fascinating, and to see it in Maisel and to hear the story about how the Catskills literally changed your life. I mean, that one moment changed your life. And
isn't that funny though, Tony, how little things.
Yeah.
You're always waiting in life for the big thing to happen. When is that thing going to happen? That monumental moment. And change, what I learned, comes in little increments, and it's not always the big monumental. I won this contest. Who knew that this little contest would be the beginning of this major life?
Right, but winning that contest, then a big responsibility. How do I continue this momentum? And tell us a little bit before we take our first segment to a commercial break. Tell us a little bit about the television opportunities and the mentors you had along the way.
Well, I was very lucky because Herb was very plugged in. And although my parents didn't want me to be in show business, they liked Herbie a lot. And he was a good Brooklyn boy himself, and they just liked him. My grandmother turned out knew his mother. You know, it was one of those things. You know, Jewish geography.
Yeah, of course.
And exactly. And they let me try. One thing about my parents, they always let me take my shot. And Herbie was very plugged in because of the success that he was having in the business. And he happened to be, now here's another moment. He happened to be recording Merv Griffin at the time. You know, Merv wasn't just a TV host. He was also someone who started in the big band era.
Right,
and
exactly.
He was a singer.
You know, yeah.
Right, with Freddie Martin's band.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know. So Herbie was recording Merv, and he asked my mother and father at the time, this was months after he had met me, he asked Mama and Papa if he could take me out of school that day and bring me to Manhattan for me to meet Merv Griffin. And my parents were terrific. And they said, as long as you make up your homework on the next day, you can go. You know, and I went, great. And my mother dressed me to the nines, and I was all dressed up. And Herbie picked me up because he didn't live far from me in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And he drove me into Manhattan. And on the break, I sang for Merv Griffin. And less than a week later, Tony, again, flying by the seat of my pants. This is what my life has been all about. Never any formal training, nothing. I wound up on the Merv Griffin show. Wow. And for the next 25, 30 years, I did nothing but television. Wow. Right after that. I mean, it's kind of, you couldn't write this stuff. It's crazy. It's very Marjorie Morningstar.
Yes, it is. Well, listen, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Our sponsors who are supporting this Baby Boomer podcast, and we'll be right back.
Yes, thanks.
Welcome back to the Baby Boomer Report. We're speaking with Julie Budd. And for context, for maybe some of those who don't know the name or aren't familiar with the name. And I just mean for context, okay? Because in the first segment, you're talking about this little girl, and you're still a little girl, right? What are you all of 5'2"?
Well, if I really straighten up.
Okay.
Yes. If I really, really do big hair that day.
Okay, I got it. Speaking of Leslie Gore, the Leslie Gore hair, which she had that big, big hair on top.
Oh, I loved. I miss Leslie. You know, the one thing about kind of sometimes being the last man standing is you have to have said goodbye to some wonderful people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate to know them, but it's sad to speak of them in the past.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I've been very fortunate and blessed in my career to spend time with very visible people. And when I first got into the business, I was all of 17 years old, and I was told, whatever you do not act like you don't belong, and don't ever don't ever pull a Ralph Cramden when you meet, celebrities or sports stars that maybe you idolized, so don't pull a hamana. But I remember one time I had such a crush on Leslie Gore. I remember I had to introduce her at a concert. I was introducing her and a bunch of other stars. And just to meet Leslie Gore, I almost pulled a Ralph Cramden there. So
yeah, wasn't she a delightful person?
Yeah.
And she was so smart.
Yeah, extremely bright, and just talk about carving a path. But anyway, let's get back to so you get to do the Merv Griffin show for 20 or 30 years. You're being mentored by amazing people and by some of the great promoters in the industry. Now you find yourself. How in the world do you find yourself opening up for Sinatra and Liberace and Danny Thomas and Bob Hope and Joan? I mean, we'll go on and on. How do you find yourself in that spot?
Well, when I was growing up in this business, we didn't have 90 million stations the way you do now.
Yeah.
Everybody was basically watching the same shows. You had in New York, but everybody had their version of what we have in New York. We had CBS, NBC, and ABC, and then There were a couple of other secondary stations, that were
Yeah.
independent, like Pix, and
Then you turn the
all those.
TV off after the national anthem at midnight.
That's right, unless you wanted to watch a pattern on TV.
Exactly.
And and the thing is, if you were on TV, Tony, and you know this to be true because you probably saw it in your career and on radio as well too. There weren't as many stations as we have now. If you were on Ed Sullivan, let's say, or Merv Griffin or Johnny Carson, you walk down the street the next day, it's like everybody knew who you were.
Oh, it's remarkable.
Everybody watched it. Everybody watched TV, watched the same shows at the same time, and there were very few competing shows if something was as big as Sullivan, So when I was on TV on all of those shows, and I had done Carol Burnett's show and Jim Neighbor's show, I had a CBS contract. I did Ed Sullivan, and I did Kraft Music Hall. And I had the TV special, the Christmas special with Wayne Newton, and I was on TV every other day. I saved all my old diaries, of my work diaries. Sometimes twice a week I would be on TV because it was an era when you had nothing but these wonderful variety shows on TV.
Exactly.
And they were like mini Broadway shows, and it was like repertory. You had to learn it all in a week. And the thing is, I started to get a major name in the business. Now, I didn't know that I was becoming a star. I was just me from Brooklyn taking the train into Manhattan every day to go to work after school.
Right. And what age are
and
you now? You're obviously not 12 anymore.
I'm 13, 14,
Okay.
15, 16, within those years.
Okay.
And I met Frank Sinatra when I was a month short of my 16th birthday. And what happened was I was always on TV, always on TV, always on TV. Now we're going 3, 4, 5 years into my career, and everybody knows who Julie Budd is if they watch TV. And I had record contracts, and there were certain places I couldn't work because there were child labor laws and they served alcohol, so I couldn't perform in a nightclub, but I could perform in a performing arts center, and I could perform at a symphony, and I could perform on TV, and that kind of thing, concert halls. But I could not perform in a nightclub where they had to have a liquor license. In most states didn't permit that till you were 18 or 21. Interestingly enough, though, here's the good part. Interestingly enough, in Las Vegas, there were no child labor laws.
Huh. Interesting.
Nothing in the state of Nevada. I could work Tahoe, I could work Vegas, I could work all of those places. So what happened was the head of Caesar's Palace of entertainment was a fabulous guy called Dave Victorson. Mm-hmm. And Davey Victorson was an angel. And there was another guy who was head of food and beverage called Bob Paluzzi, and they were booking all the entertainment in. Private stuff went through Bob Paluzzi, and the public big show stuff went through Davey Victorson. And they all watched TV, and you couldn't avoid finding me. I was on TV every other 5 minutes. And Frank Sinatra knew of me, I guess, through TV, and they were he was coming from the Riviera contract. He had the Sands contract way before I was even born, and then he had the Riviera contract, and he was getting out of that contract. Caesars had offered him a mega deal, and he wanted to go in, not just with some old-fashioned comic or whatever. He wanted something different.
He didn't want Shecky Greene or Buddy Hackett or something like that?
Well, he would have loved it. Quite frankly, he had some wonderful people opening for him, but I was a special guest. He had a guy by the name of Pat Henry who always traveled with him.
Oh, yeah.
But he wanted a bigger show because it was his first show into Caesars. I was the first show. So we get a call from William Morris. I was with William Morris at the time.
Right. Big agency.
Huge. It was worldwide, and it still is. And Norman Brokaw and Lee Solomon were the two biggest agents there, and they signed me. And so I was in very good hands. And Herbie was taking care of the recording end. He got me a deal with MGM Records. So the only element that was missing now was Vegas. So we get a call, and they say, be prepared. Caesar's Palace and Frank Sinatra's office are both going to call.
Wow.
They want Julie to be Frank Sinatra's special guest artist.
Wow.
for his first contract then. So I didn't know, is he going to call? Is he not going to call? And one day after school, I'm in Herbie's kitchen. And we had a lot of stuff to do that day because every week I was doing another TV show. And Herbie was on the phones all day, and Herbie was handling my career at the time. Now he's my musical director, but at the time he was handling everything. And because he had discovered me. And he was very plugged in. It was all working. The phone rings, and I say, "Herbie, are you going to get it?" And I don't hear an answer. And Herbie, and I'm in the kitchen. I'm making a salami sandwich. It's after school, and I'm starving. And he doesn't pick up the phone, so I pick up the phone. And I say, Herb Bernstein's office, and a lady on the other end says, this is William Morris and Frank Sinatra, and we want to speak to Herb Bernstein. Does he handle Julie Budd? And I say, will you please hold on, in my most professional voice. I put the call on hold, praying that I don't disconnect them. I run down the hall to Herbie in a cold sweat, and I say, Herbie, you have to get on the phone. And he says, why? And it's like, who died? And I said, Frank Sinatra and William Morris. And that's all I got out. And Herbie runs to the phone. And within 15 minutes, not even, maybe 10 minutes, we had a deal at Caesar's Palace. And I was opening for Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And I had to hurry up and get this show together because this show was coming up fast.
That must have been amazing.
Well, what do you do when you hear a thing like this and somebody hangs up the phone and says, you're a deal, you're a real deal?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do? You get on the phone and you call your parents.
Of course. You're not going to believe this, Mom. And then your mother calls up her mother, and your grandmother knows, and the word spreads quickly.
And faster than the internet. We had no internet in those days.
Oh, goodness me.
And that's how I started working with Frank Sinatra.
Wow.
And then Davey Victorson liked me so much that he gave me a multi deal with Caesars, and I wound up working with. That's when I met Liberace,
Right?
Because I did a world tour with Liberace.
What were both Sinatra and Liberace like to work for and with?
Well, they were very, very, very different. The only thing that you can really connect Lee and Frank is that they both were very hands-on in their work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as they had a lot of help and people around them and directors and producers and, all the yes men. Oh, I got to tell you about the yes men. But they were very hands-on. And I learned you got to know something about your business to run your business. And I learned that about them. But I'll tell you what happened on my flight going out to meet Frank Sinatra. There were all these people on the flight. And they were the agents and the press agents, and I call them the yes men.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the flight, and they said, you don't talk to Frank Sinatra. When you get there, if you need anything, you come to us. You don't breathe around Frank Sinatra. You don't talk around. You don't look at. I said, I get it.
Yeah.
So I'm there opening day, and I'm finishing up my rehearsal, and they're telling me to hurry. Mr. Sinatra is coming down to rehearse his stuff. And I didn't even know he was rehearsing like that close to my stuff that day, but fine. I finished up, Herbie and I heard these arrangements for the first time on that day, and it was 45 musicians. And I start walking off the stage, and I see somebody. My eyes have been in the light, so they're not adjusted yet. It kind of feels like when a camera goes off and you can't see right away. And I'm in the wings, and I see somebody blowing a kiss, so I blow a kiss back. And I walked toward this person, and it was Frank Sinatra, and his arms were open, and the first thing he says to me is, if you need anything, you come right to me.
How great is that? Julie, we could go on for hours. We have a little bit of time left, but context again, let's tell people listening, how old are you now?
I'm 65.
And tell the baby boomer who's listening, how is it that you this is all about the baby boomers who still have game, and we're trying to, get to let people know that because you're 60, 65, 70, 75 years old, that doesn't mean your life is over. That doesn't mean you're sitting on the couch watching
it's just beginning.
TV, right?
It can just be. Listen, I have to tell you, my life has taken so many turns in this business, and I don't even like the word reinvent, because you are who you are, but you learn more every day. And you can be learning at 25, you could be learning at 65. Actually, learning at 65 is even more fun because you have more artillery to go into it with. Do you know what I'm saying?
I gotcha.
And you go into it smarter than you were at 25.
Right.
And it's actually more exciting. I mean, I'm teaching now, I'm producing now, I'm writing, I have my concerts. I'm going back to Vegas. I'm going to the Smith Center for the Performing Arts. I'm opening up in New York in April. I'll be at the theater, the Birdland Theater in April. I'm going to be in Florida at the Lyric Theater. I'm all over the country, and I'm busier now in some ways in the industry than I was at 25. So, you know what, people, just embrace your life today. This is the only moment, the moment that we are in right now. Don't take it for granted. Squeeze every little cell out of it that you can.
Julie, what a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. If people want to learn more about you and more about your concert tours and where you're going to be performing, they can go to juliebudd.com. Isn't that your website?
Sure, and they can, what's even better, go to my Facebook page. Because if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see everything. You'll see photos. You'll hear recordings. You'll be part of the conversation, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Julie Budd, what a pleasure to have you on the Baby Boomer Report. You're certainly an inspiration, and for those listening, if you want to learn more about Julie, go see her perform. Pull up her YouTube channel. See some of the things that she's done. If you don't know who she is, you should know. Shame on you. And for those of you who do, follow Julie. You can go to juliebudd.com. You can go to her Facebook page. And if you want to learn more about the Baby Boomer Report, you can go to our Facebook page. Pretty simple, the Baby Boomer Report on Facebook. For all of us here, Julie, thank you so much. We loved having you.
I loved being here. Thanks so much, Tony.